Hi Mindsetters, welcome to today's Grade 12 Business Studies show, proudly brought to you by Macmillan. I'm Katleho. We have selected highlights from lessons shown earlier on in the term to help you guys revise all the work we've done together in our first term. You can download the notes for today's show from learnextra.co.za/live. Also, please post all your comments and your questions on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/learnextra. Also on Twitter, which is @learnextra, so that we can help you with all your revision. Guys, let's get on with today's show.
So what I want to do is, I've got 3 questions for you. Question 1, 2, 3. Well, makes sense. But I want to jump to question 3 first quickly. So question 3, I took out of your Macmillan textbook, and it was on page 77. Now, this question says, list 5 ways the LC can ensure her company respects human rights and inclusivity at the cultural village. Now, I use this question without the case study because we don't really need to know LC, and we don't have to worry too much about the cultural village. This could be a question going, you can use this either way. So list 5 ways you can ensure, or she can ensure, her company respects human rights and inclusivity. I think this is a nice broad question. So what can companies do to take this on board, make it part of their business? So the first thing they can do is simply by displaying BCEA in their staff room. And I did that on purpose. I will tell you what that means, but I want you to think about it while I finish writing this. So, displaying basic conditions of Employment Act in their staff room. So literally making sure that employees are aware of what their basic rights are constantly. So that's a good way of making your employees very aware, as well as bringing in human rights and inclusivity. The second thing a company can do, second part to this, they can start a social responsibility program. So social responsibility program. So helping disadvantaged individuals. Next, and quite simply, this is an easy one, guys. Businesses can conform to human rights, basic conditions. What was the question? I should make sure. So how can they make sure that they're following human rights, and how can they make sure that they include inclusivity? It's as easy as following the laws of the country. So that's the third thing companies can do. They have to just simply follow the law. So number 3, follow the law. And which laws? That would be all of those laws we've discussed. Basic conditions of employment, employment equity, good grief, skills development, all those laws we spoke about there, but also respecting all the other laws that our country has, including inclusivity, for example, and not harming the environment. I want to do one more with you. So the 4th thing that a company could do is to draft a code of conduct for their employees. So draft a code of conduct for their employees. So by drafting a code of conduct, the employees will be sure that they know exactly, firstly, A, what is expected from them, and they can also make sure by reading the code of conduct that the company is simply following the laws of South Africa. So code of conduct, a very, very nice one for both employers and employees. So now what I want to do is I want to skip back to question 1. So what was question 1? So question 1, and remember I love to highlight, so if you've got this in front of you, highlight. So question 1, and this was from a previous paper. Question 1 says, discuss how businesses in South Africa can contribute to human rights, inclusivity, and environmental issues in the workplace. So this question is asking us to discuss 3 things. And you will also see that it's worth 18 marks. So again, you're sitting in the exam, you're stressing how much am I supposed to write. So make your life easier, guys. We know at this stage you get 2 marks for everything. Do you agree? Or not for for most things you get 2 marks. So if you go 18 divided by 3 will give you 6. So I'm going to leave that there. Think about it. Okay. So let's do the first part of this question. The first part of the question says, discuss how businesses in South Africa can contribute to human rights. So I'm going to just say human and a big R. I assume you guys know it's human rights. So what can business do to help with this? So the first thing they need to do is they should uphold and respect the Bill of Rights. Now, the Bill of Rights is set out in the Constitution. And this, a good example with this, that you can go with this, guys, is to always treat everybody fairly and with respect. So the first thing there, businesses must uphold the Bill of Rights. And how can they do this? They treat their employees with respect, not just respect, they also treat them fairly. A second point you can write for this, they can fund projects that, we should get that, so they can fund projects that promote rights and freedoms. Rights and freedoms. And a company can do this by simply supporting or funding a day like Freedom Day, for example, and creating an event for people to celebrate and to show that they actually just care. The third one with this one, let's have a look, is they can promote basic human rights. So let's write this down. Promote human rights in respect to issues like healthcare. So let's go with healthcare. They can promote human rights issues like healthcare. And how can a business go about doing this? By CSI, seeing if they can get involved in helping people with HIV/AIDS, schools, etc. So this question, I took it specifically to healthcare just to give you the example of the HIV/AIDS. It could be a clinic, but it could also be just educating your workers, giving them the policies, making sure that they live the healthiest life they can so they can be as productive as possible. Now, this question, remember, had 3 parts. The next part was, let's change colors so you guys can look at it in a different way. So how can businesses contribute to inclusivity in the workplace? So with this one, inclusivity. So the first thing they can do this, the first thing a company needs to do must be to try and redress the imbalances of the past. Now, when I say the imbalances of the past, you know that I'm referring to old apartheid laws that limited a lot of people in our country. Now, one way to redress the imbalances of the past would be to make sure, remember we looked at demographics, so we've got the black, white, female, all of that, but it's also to redress the imbalances of the past. Hiring disabled people is also very important. So part of this would be, for example, hiring people with disabilities. Another way to show your inclusivity would be not to discriminate against anyone. So not to discriminate. And hopefully all you guys out there should know not to discriminate would include everything. Age, race, color, gender. So to be completely inclusive, you cannot discriminate against anyone. Why? Because our Constitution tells us that we are all equal. And the third one to this would be that businesses invest in specialized projects. So for businesses to invest in specialized projects. Now, for businesses to invest in specialized projects, and remember we're looking at the big picture, we're looking at inclusivity, they could invest in things like art exhibitions, cultural events, trying to just get a broader picture. So yes, we've got sport, all those things, but also going to specific projects, art projects, things like that. And then the third part to this one, remember, was so we've done inclusivity, we have done human rights, and the last part to this is environmental. So what can business do? So let's go back up. I want you to remember what the question is. So what can businesses in South Africa, how can businesses in South Africa contribute towards environmental issues? In other words, fixing environmental issues. So let's have a look. Yeah, I'm going to abbreviate this, guys. All follow me. Environmental issues. So with that, the first one, let's write it down. So what they can do, they can donate funds used to, or they can donate funds to look after or preserve the environment. And example of this would be Nedbank contributes funds for nature conservation. So how can Nedbank? So think about this logically, guys. Nedbank doesn't have a big factory. They don't emit a whole lot of pollution, but still they're doing their bit for the environment by donating, giving CSR, doing all those things to look after the environment. And it's basically, it's a gesture of showing that they're concerned for the future and making sure that the planet is looked after. Let's look at the second type here. So the second one we could use, so that again, this could be funds to help prevent pollution. So an example of that would be SAPI, which they use, then they manufacture a lot of things. So what they do is the water that's used by them, they monitor it very often, and they basically make sure that that water that is used is constantly okay for the environment around them. So that's another way. So where the bank, on the one hand, was giving money to try and uplift, for example, now SAPI is just literally taking the damage they could have made and making sure that they're not causing any damage. And the third one, they can contribute to making, or for less, businesses can contribute by having less wastage or better waste management. So contributing to having less waste management, things like that, A lot of offices, even in your schools, do yourself a favor, go to school tomorrow and have a look, and there should be a Ronnie bin or one of those lying around. And that is business and schools trying to reduce the amount of waste. And how they're doing this? By recycling, guys. So that's another way that business can contribute to looking after the environment, by making sure that they are recycling. We're doing very good today. I think I'm going to squeeze in a third question.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to do a third question today. Yay. So, question 2. And I'm terribly bored of green. So, what is this? This is from the paper March 2009. Now, discrimination in the workplace is one of the human rights issues that has a negative impact on the relationships between employers and employees. That's nice and obvious. You can see how that's a problem. Now, do you agree or disagree with the statement, and motivate your answer? So now, I don't know about you, I've already forgot what I wrote on top, so it's always a good idea to go back up. So, discrimination in the workplace is one of the human rights issues that has a negative effect on the relationship between employers and employees. So discrimination, we've all been bullied, we've all been through stuff, and you know what, it's not nice. So if you imagine you experiencing discrimination at work, you're not going to be very productive, are you? But this question is actually quite clever because it looks at it in 2 ways. So the first part of this question is, do you agree or disagree? So I'm going to go with, I'm going to be devil's advocate, and I'm going to agree and disagree and show you why. So the first part of this, so do you agree with a statement? You can agree with a statement, but remember, you have to give a motivation. So if you agree with a statement, you could say that dissatisfaction, so dissatisfaction will lead to low morale. Okay, so like I said, so you're very unhappy at work, your boss isn't treating you right, your colleagues aren't treating you right, you are going to feel down. Now think about any day at school. Even if you go to school and you're having a really bad day, chances are that you're going to be doing a lot of hard work. Very slim. You sort of just sit there, staring out the window, looking at your desk, and nothing gets done. Now that's a waste because you've just wasted a day of education. But in a company, that person doing the same thing is literally costing you money. So if people aren't being efficient, they're not producing, and at the end of the day, you're really just making it difficult for yourself. If you want to disagree with a statement, let's have a look at if you disagree. So you could say, no, I don't agree with a statement. And it could be that simply workers prefer the security and high pay if you say no, you can say no, workers prefer being paid well and having security and sort of just dealing with it. So some people would just go, you know what, I actually just don't care. I want to get paid well and I can deal with this and I can go through it. So this question, guys, could have been a yes or a no, but you had to provide an explanation. And if you look at the memo, if you don't say yes or no, you don't get a mark for your motivation. Why? Because what are you motivating? Whether you agree or disagree. So always remember, it's 2 very short words. Yes, I agree. Why? No, I agree. Why? No? No, I don't agree.
No, I don't agree.
I don't agree.
Then reason.
You have to give the reason. And then I'm going to quickly stroll down a little bit further because the question also asks you, well, let's go down and see what they ask you. So indicate how discrimination, there's the question. I'm completely getting way ahead of myself. So the question was, discrimination in the workplace is one of the human rights issues that has a negative impact on the relationship between employer and employee. The second part of this question now is asking us, indicate how discrimination can be resolved in the workplace. Okay, now I think that would probably make a whole lot more sense. Remember, a happy worker is a hard worker. So you want to try and resolve any issues that came up. And also, if you think about this logically, guys, remember we just did legislation. If people are discriminating against you, there are laws protecting you. So nobody should have to ever deal with being discriminated against. So before I get off track again, let's have a look. So what can businesses do to resolve this? The first thing they can do is prepare a code of ethics. Second thing they can do is provide training. So training their staff on how to be more sensitive. And literally, like I told you guys, reference can be made to the Employment Equity Act, which protects all of us. And that's basically, and if we, let's have a look here, it's for 4, so what they really wanted was 2 times 2. I gave you 3 here, and remember in exam time, write 2. If you've got time, you can always come back.
Now it's time for a break, so don't go away and we'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. Please remember that this month is Library Month. We really think that reading is important and can be a whole lot of fun too. So remember to join in the chat on the page and tell us about the books you love. Look out for our book competitions too during Easter revision. We are going to have a whole lot of fun. But for now, let's get back to revision. Over to you.
So remember, big up to Macmillan for helping us out, sponsoring the show. So if you've got your Macmillan textbook, you can follow me with this question. So this is activity 5. It's on page 105, and it looks at insurance. Now, the question asks you, study the pictures in the illustration and then identify the various risks in each of them. So let's have a look at the first one. What's happening here? We've got a fireman, there's a factory, and quite clearly there's some flames happening here. So what is the first type of risk here? It's a factory on fire, so it's a fire risk. Cool. So the second one, we've got a woman breaking into it clearly looks like she's breaking into a clothing shop. So this will be theft. Let's quickly label this one. This would be fire. Let's have a look at the next picture. This guy is standing in a shop. Looks like there's some CDs, things happening in the background, maybe DVDs. Oh, there we go, DVD. What is he doing? He's stealing. So again, this would be an example of theft. So theft, and I lost my pen. Let me quickly grab it again. So this is theft. And the last one, there's some bad guys, and this is, you can see this is a cash and transit truck. So this is an example of a cash in transit type of robbery. So the question was, I didn't ask you to write anything down, I just asked you to identify. So basically you should get you thinking. The first question here says, what must the factory owner do as soon as possible after the outbreak of a fire? Now, think about this logically. A fire broke out. There's a couple of things you need to do, guys. The first thing would be there's a fire. What are you going to do? You're going to phone the fire department. Second, you will phone the police. And thirdly, remember, we're looking at insurance. Your business just burned down. You have to contact your insurance company. So let's quickly write these down. So what must the factory owner do as soon as possible? First off, phone the police. So it'll be police. Then, you see, I hope you're concentrating there. So second thing would be police. First thing would be the fire department. And the third thing they need to do would be to get hold of their insurance company. So that was a nice, easy question, basically 3 marks. Question B, the factory building and the contents of the first example. Remember, the first example was the fire. The factory building and the contents are insured for 1.4 million rand. But the insurance agent determined the full value at 1.8 million rand. So they insured it for 1.4. it was actually worth 1.8. How did he determine the value of the building and the stock if the damage was extensive? Now, this is pretty easy in this day and age, guys. You will have records of things being appraised. You will have records of what things cost. So literally the answer to this question is records kept. So how will they know it's worth 1.8? Because the company has kept records. So let's quickly write this down. So for B, would be records kept. Now these records, in other words, invoices, appraisals, things like that, will have to be kept in a fireproof safe, as well as these type of records in this type of instance. There will also be something called an iron safe clause. Now this basically means you have to keep your records. In the old days, you would literally have to keep your records in a big old-fashioned safe that is fireproof. So if a fire broke out, everything would have been burnt down and the safe would have been standing. Why? So that you can prove the value of your company. These days, obviously, we've got amazing internet stuff. So we've got iCloud, we can save things externally. But I would imagine some companies will still have the good old-fashioned thing, as well as the technological backup. Question C, on your textbook, would have been number 3, asks us, in calculating the amount to be paid to the factory owner, which clause of the insurance contract would the agent have to take into account? Hopefully, as I was reading this, you were going, oh, please, we've just done this. It's the average clause. So remember, that was insured for 1.4. The agent worked out it was worth 1.8. So it would be the average clause, and more specifically, what? Underinsurance. So let's write this down. So the first part, yeah. So what is it? It would fall under the average clause. And it would be a prime example of underinsurance. Let's have a look at the next question. The next question is asking us, will the full amount of any claim be paid out to the factory owner? Motivate your answer. And the answer simply would be no. Why? Because it was underinsured. And the last question here, this is a calculation, some of my favorite things to do. So how much would the factory owner receive if the damages amounted to 500,000 Rand? Show all your workings. Remember, if they ask for it, do it, guys. So grab your pens, piece of paper. If you're not too sure on the calculation, let's do this together. So it would be 1.4 million. Oh, I'm all over the show. Yeah, just give me a sec. I want to erase this. So it is the 1.4 million over the 1.8 million. Just make sure I've got enough zeros here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Times the amount of loss, which in this case was 500,000 Rand. And if you quickly take your calculators, you will see that this works out to be 388,888.88. Now, those of you who got a little bit lost here, remember, what are we doing? We are looking at how much would the factory owner be paid out if the damage was worth 500,000 Rand. Now, if you forget easily, remember 1.4 million was the amount it was insured for. So this was the insured amount divided by the actual value times by the loss. So because this person chose to underinsure their goods by 400,000 Rand, they literally, because they suffered a loss, they suffered an even greater loss because they're underinsured. So that was question 1. The next question I took was from a previous paper, an exam question. And this is a nice, easy one. The majority of you, actually, I want to go one further. All of you should be able to calculate simple interest at this stage, but I want to do this question with you. So let's have a look at question 2. So question 2 says, Basil invested 10,000 Rand of his annual bonus in a fixed deposit account at Standard Bank, earning an interest rate of 12% per annum. The question asks, using the simple interest method, calculate the return earned by Basil over a period of 12 months. So let's have a quick look here, and it's worth 4 marks, so you can see even this, it's a quick, easy question to do. So the answer is going to, let me quickly find it. I'm sorry, I'm going to show you the formula. So what are we asking, or what are they asking? They're asking us, using the simple interest method, calculate the return. So I've got a little formula here, but you, and whatever type of calculation you want to use, go for it as long as we get to the same answer. So the interest he received, or how much did he get back, what was his return? So P times R times T, and remember, P would be the initial amount, R is the interest, and T would be the duration. So let's have a quick look at this calculation. So it's going to basically look like this. So what was the initial amount? The initial amount was 10,000 Rand. So it's going to be 10,000 Rand times the interest, and the interest they told us was 12% per annum. So that's 12 over 100 times the duration, and they told us it's over 12 months. So we know it's going to be 12 over 12. And before I give you the answer here, again, it doesn't really matter which formula you use as long as we get to the same answer. And when you've worked it out, his return was 1,200 Rand on his initial investment of 10,000 Rand. That's not a bad return at all for a year's investment. So the next question follows on to this, and it asks us, give 2 reasons why Basil's investment in a fixed deposit account is good. So the 2 reasons for this is, a fixed deposit account would be low risk, and the second reason that this would be a good investment would be a return of 12%, which is quite high, is better than many forms many forms of other types of investments. So 2 reasons. 1, it's low risk, and 2, 12% is a pretty good return. Now, what I want you to add in there, if you're not going to remember this, remember with investments, high risk, high return. Low risk, low return in general. So with high risk, what I mean with a high risk investment, it means you can either do extremely well, or you could literally lose everything. So sometimes a good example of a high risk investment would be shares, where depending on what's happening in the economy, your shares could go up 200% in value, or something happens like a global recession, which we recently had, and company just fails, and there you've lost everything. Where if you put your money in a deposit or a fixed deposit, it's pretty safe. So it's low risk, but you'll also have a low return. This example, or this question of the 12%, is pretty high for a fixed deposit. So if you get this question, just keep that in mind. The third question I want to do with you today, again, it's from a previous paper, the November 2009 paper. The question is, Zamisa Zulu bought 100,000 ordinary shares. Remember, we looked at what ordinary shares are. Bought 100,000 ordinary shares at 2 Rand per share from a public company listed on the Johannesburg Security Exchange. At the end of the financial year, he received his first dividend check of 40,000 Rand from the company. The question is, calculate the percentage return on investment received by Zamisa. Now, grab your pen, paper, do this with me. So, how are we going to work this out, or how are we going to calculate this? The formula for a return on investment looks like this. So, write this down if you don't know it. Your return on investment, I'm going to abbreviate that slightly. Your return on investment looks like this. So it's return over your amount invested. And again, I'm abbreviating this, I'm sorry, amount invested times 100. Why times 100, guys? Remember, we are calculating a percentage. Whenever you calculate a percentage, you need the 100 there to give you the percentage. So the question asked us, what was the rate of a return? Whenever they asked that, you can use this formula. So let's have a look at the question. It said, he bought 100,000 shares. I'm going to change my pen quickly. He bought 100,000 shares at R2 a share, and at the end of the financial year, which was 1 year, he received 40,000 rand. Calculate their percentage return. So the return was, we know he received the 40,000. So it's going to look like this. 40,000 over the amount he invested. How much did he invest? He bought 100,000 shares at R2 a share. So don't confuse this. Remember, he bought 100,000 shares at R2 a share times 100, which will mean that he received a 20% return. So that is an exceptional return on investment, guys. 20% increase, this is a good investment. So again, when you asked to calculate the rate of, or the return, I'm speaking in riddles here, the return on investment, remember, it's the amount that you've invested, or, okay, let's start this again. So,
Tongue twister there.
tongue twister. So it's your return on investment. How do you calculate this? It's your return over the amount invested times 100, because it's a percentage. The second question here, and I think, yes, I'll be able to squeeze it in. I'm very excited. The second question is, will Zamisa be happy with his return on his investment? Motivate your answer. And it's worth 4. So I've already told you that I don't know about him, but I will definitely be happy. So the answer here would be yes, he would definitely be happy with his 20%. Why? The first reason would be it is a really high return. So it's a high return. And it's a high return in relation to, for example, a fixed deposit. And I just want to remind you guys, remember, high return, high risk. And also, why would this be a good investment? This would be a good investment because it is simply higher than the inflation rate. So he is keeping ahead of the game, and not just keeping ahead of the game, he is actually making a profit. So, wow, I had such a cool day today. I love investments, I love insurance, I love assurance. Now, in a later show, we're going to go into a lot of detail and calculations. With the insurance, assurance, investment section, you will be required to be able to calculate a return on investment, cost of shares. You need to be able to do calculations on underinsurance, for example. So if you have a slight phobia, because there are some of you out there with a phobia for maths, watch Mindset.
Yeah.
That really is the easiest.
That's number one.
That's number one. Number 2, you should actually just chill, guys. These things, I will go through it with you, and it's like everything else in life. You practice these calculations, and you'll do well. A lot of these times, these calculations are really simple, so they're free marks. So I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Like I said, insurance, awesome stuff. And last word, remember, assurance, it's something that will happen, guys.
Okay, guys, I hope you're really, really enjoying this revision session. If you are struggling and need help, remember to post on the page or send an email to helpdesk@learnextra.co.za. Now it's time for a break, so don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Mindsetters. Today we are doing revision. Even though we are selecting highlights from previous shows, you can still follow me on Twitter @LearnExtra or post or comment on our Facebook page facebook.com/learnextra. Right now, let's do some more revision.
So grab your notes and follow along. So the first type of problem solving. So I made the notes quite short, easy to follow, and these are problem solving techniques. And with problem solving techniques, remember, the answer really is creative thinking. Now, creative thinking at the end of the day is all about taking problems in your business and fixing them by thinking outside the box, for example. And if you think back to one of our very, very first lessons, where we looked at strategies, where we had defensive strategies and intensive strategies, a lot of those would involve some creative thinking to try and get the business where you want it to be, which is profitable, really. So let's have a look at the very first problem-solving technique I've got here for you, which is the Delphi technique. Now, the Delphi technique was originally conceived as a way of obtaining the opinions of experts without necessarily bringing them together face to face. So you see how this is going to start saving you time. Now, this technique can be costly as experts in the field are employed to work on a particular problem. And very important here, it's mainly used by big corporates. Big corporates. Remember, this would become a financial issue, so that's why bigger companies would use it. And the last point of the Delphi technique is that it's useful for generating and clarifying ideas, reaching consensus, prioritizing, and decision making. Now, the Delphi technique has a couple of steps to it. If you don't remember the steps, or if you're unclear on the steps, check out your Macmillan textbook, they would be in there, or have a look at your grade 11 notes. There are specific steps that go with this, but what I want you to know with the Delphi technique, it's for bigger businesses to reach consensus. Remember, the longer you are unclear on an issue, the longer it's taking you to make a decision for your business, you could be losing money. So problem solving, using the Delphi technique, you're going to get experts in, but you don't necessarily have to see them face to face. So that will also save you time in the sense that you don't have to get the people they have to go back, whole long mission. So it doesn't have to be done face to face. Let's look at the second problem solving technique. This one is the force field analysis. Now remember, with a force field analysis, you can literally, I pressed the wrong button and I got all over the show here. Okay, so with force field analysis, before we go into too much detail, you're literally going to make a list of pros and cons. And when you're doing this, you're going to list them. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And obviously say whatever you need to say. And as you're doing this, you're going to give them scores. So 6, 4, 3, 1. And let's make this 5, 2, 4, 1. So this is going to give you a score of 12. And this is going to give you a score of 14. So the long and the short, when you're using a force field analysis, this 14 will tell you that the pros literally outweigh the cons, and it's probably a good idea to go with that idea. But now that you've got, so just have a quick look at that again, you're going to list your pros, you're going to list your cons, you're going to give them a weighting according to a specific weighting, and depending on whichever one comes out with the highest total, that's the best idea to go with. Now, let's have a look. So if you want to change something in the business, you look at the forces for, so in other words, the pros, and against change. So against would be the cons, by giving a score for each force. Now, this is used to plan and implement change in a business. Now, the total score for and against the change will give the indication if this is necessary to change or not. So I just want to add in there, remember, this for is basically a pro, and the against will be a con. So making a list of pros and cons, looking at a proposed change. The next thing I want to do is Scamper. Now Scamper is cool in that it literally tells you what it is. So you use Scamper, you break the words down, and you just literally need to know what these things mean. And Scamper is usually more used for products. So Delphi would be for making big business decisions, for example. It could be on different issues. Then we looked at a force field analysis. Now a force field analysis you usually use to look at change. So is it a good idea to change school uniforms or not? And you weigh up the differences. Scamper, like I said, we focus more on products. So let's have a look. So Scamper, in this technique, a set of questions are used that must be answered to come up with a new idea. Now, the alphabet stands for the following. Let's have a quick look. I want to change the color of my pen. So in case you were dozing off, you can have a bit of color here. So the S in Scamper stands for substitute. So let's use an example. We are not selling enough, let's go with iPad covers. We're not selling enough iPad covers. What's happening? What's happening to the market? What can I do to make this iPad cover better? So S, substitute. So what part of the product can be substituted by something else to remove the problem or create an improvement? So let's think of an iPad cover, flip it open, and it basically just stands one way. Now, what can we change to make that? What can we change on that basic idea? What can we substitute to bring something extra? So maybe instead of using like a leathery cover, maybe you can go with like one of those more plastic, like sticky covers, and that can maybe, like, if you stand it against the wall, it won't fall, it won't slip. So you can have it at different angles depending on what you're doing. So substitute something in your existing product. The next one, C, would be to combine. So what people or processes can be combined to remove the problem or to create an improvement? So what can I combine? In other words, what can I combine to create an improvement to this? So maybe I know every time I open mine, it's mostly to check the time. So maybe top right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, there can be like a little LCD screen just showing the time.
Yeah.
So we're combining it with something else. So like that's pretty old school, guys, like a little watch thing at the bottom of your iPad, but you're combining it with something that's making it more friendly, user-friendly, really. Let's have a look at the next one. I'm going to go through this a little bit faster though, guys. So A would be to adapt. So what can be changed to remove the problem or to create an improvement? The M stands for modify or magnify. So what can be modified or magnified to create an improvement? The P stands for put to another use. So how else can this problem be solved? The E would be to eliminate. So what will happen if parts of the problem or process is removed? And lastly, R would be to rearrange or to reverse. So what if the problem was approached from another angle? So Scamper. Think about the easiest way to think about Scamper. Scamper is a nice way to change a product or the features of a product to improve it to try and increase your sales. So if you think about this logically, guys, you can't really use Scamper so much to look at problems of change in your company. So you want to create longer working hours, you can't really use Scamper to figure out that problem, but you can use a force field analysis to try and figure out that issue. So I've got the questions we're doing. I haven't really done multiple choice with you. And multiple choice could be 3 marks or could literally be 2 marks you've just thrown away because you didn't read properly. So let's have a look at this question. So your first question would be the force field. So this one you should definitely know because we just went through it. The force field technique is an example of. Let's have a look. So with a multiple choice question, I think the first thing you should do with a multiple choice question is to read through each and every option. And a lot of the time, one option will be so ridiculous that before you even have to think about it, you can cross that one out. So let's read this question and have a look. So the force field technique is an example of A, a community responsibility program, B, an introduction program, C, creative thinking to solve business problems, and D, e-commerce. Now, like I said, a lot of the time, some of these questions are so ridiculous, or some of the options are so ridiculous, you cross them out as you go, and just to help you make sure that the question you choose is the correct one. So let's have a look. So it's a community responsibility program, so we know it's definitely not A. It's an introduction program. Maybe, let's put that down as a maybe. It's creative thinking to solve business problems. Well, now I know this is part of creative thinking. So let's put a question there. And D, e-commerce. Now we know it's definitely not part of e-commerce, so that leaves us with B and C. Now your gut should tell you what the right answer is off the bat. So when you read a question, you see the right answer, put a little pencil mark next to it because you think that's the right answer, and then go through the process of elimination. So force field analysis would definitely be C, guys. It's creative thinking to solve business problems. Let's go to the next one. B, problem-solving technique that does not require participants to be in the same place. So we know the answer to this one, again, because we did it. So what would it be? Go through your gut feeling, I feel it's that, look through the rest, and we know it's A. I quickly want to do C with you. This problem-solving technique is useful in the following circumstances. When is it useful? For group consensus, for individuals that are not in the same room, and individuals that may not want your response or want their response to be anonymous. Again, we just did Delphi, so we know it's this one. So, Delphi.
Guys, we've come to the end of today's show. Thank you so much to Macmillan for making this wonderful show possible. And thank you to you guys for joining me and participating fully in today's revision lesson. Remember to visit our website, guys, for all your notes, all the videos that you need to watch from earlier on in the term. Our website is learnextra.co.za/live. Guys, if you're stuck or you need to ask any questions, please send an email to helpdesk@learnextra.co.za and let us know exactly where you're stuck so that we can help you even more. Don't forget to look out for more news on Library Month on our Facebook page as well as on our website. And guys, remember to join us for Easter Revision too. Bye guys.